Dear Poultry friends, welcome to episode number 5 of Tune In with the Experts. In this episode, we are going to interview Marcelo Paniago and discuss with him his experience in Asia. So, stay tuned with the experts and know all about controlling Gumboro disease. Enjoy! Hi Poultry friends, I'm extremely glad to receive today Marcelo Paniago that's going to share with us his large experience in the poultry industry. Today we are going to be in a call with him as he's in Malaysia, but I'm sure that we are going to be a really nice conversation as in the other episodes. So, welcome Marcelo, how are you?
Hello, Marco. Hello, everyone. Greetings from Malaysia to all of you. And I do hope that we can have a nice conversation here and we can exchange some ideas about disease, Gumboro, Newcastle, and influenza with our insect colleagues.
Okay, Marcelo, before we start our conversation, you apport us valuable information regarding Gumboro control. I would like to ask you to share with us a little bit of your experience, in a nutshell, your experience in the poultry industry.
Well, Marco, I graduated as a veterinarian back in 1986, and I started working in the poultry industry in March 1987, or exactly 35 years ago. And I had the privilege of working in different parts of the world. I started my career in Brazil. I went to the first part, I had the training in the universities where I got my master degree, master in business administration. And after that, I moved to AgroService Ross. Today is Agent to Brazil. And in 2004, I had the opportunity to join Ceva in Malaysia, Ceva in Malaysia, to be more specifically. And then I started to work here in this very nice part of the world. And then in 2012, I was invited to join the corporate and I moved to France. I worked as the Global Veterinary Service Director for 5 years. And in 2017, I returned to Malaysia to take care of the Asian continent for Ceva animal health patient. So in a nutshell, is that for me it's a privilege to have been able to work in parts of the world.
And for us, a privilege as well to not just receive you here in the Tune In with Experts, but as well to have you as a colleague apporting all this experience and knowledge to us. But even if you are Brazilian as me, I would like to chat with you about Asia today. And we know that Asia is a large continent with different situations, with different epidemiological challenges, with several aspects that are going to change country to country, right? I would like to ask you to start the conversation, what you see in the monitoring, the surveys that are conducted in Asia. What's the situation now when the topic is Gumboro and the correlation with other disease?
Well, as you mentioned, Marco, Asia is really a very large area. So there are completely different epidemiological situations in different parts of this country. One example is Japan, a country that is free of Newcastle disease, free of avian influenza. And another extreme could be, let's mention Indonesia, where avian influenza is present, Newcastle is endemic. So we have really very diverse epidemiological situations across the region. But in a nutshell, there are some concerns from the industry that are, today there are some concerns. For example, some countries are facing huge waves of Newcastle disease. And as you know, Newcastle disease can be a devastating disease and can bring huge losses to producers. So this is one concern. Another one, and this is happening for the past 3, 4, 5 years, the spread of H9N2. This virus has been identified in almost all countries in the regions, and the potential damage caused by this really economically very damaging. Some other parts of Asia are seeing some episodes of highly pathogenic avian influenza. Again, now and then this disease affects some areas. So this could be something that I have seen. And last but not least, something that we have seen also in the past 5 years, 6 years, is the spread of variant IBD virus that has been identified in China and more recently in Japan, in Korea, in Malaysia, and even in the Philippines. So probably these are the ones that are the most major concern for the disease.
Marcelo, for sure, is a really complex situation that you have different virus circulating around the zone and different countries. I would like to take your opinion as well about, because I consider Gumboro one of the bases of the immune system of the bird. How do you see it in the combination of lack of control of Gumboro disease and appearance of different disease or respiratory disease that can be have a combination in the same bird?
Marco, this is a good question. It's a topic that would deserve a long explanation. But let me compare the situation here in Asia when I arrived in this continent back in 2004, or 18 years ago, and the situation that we are seeing today. Back in 2004, 2005, it was very common to see really the clinical disease. With all those lesions, the hemorrhagic ulcers, and all the consequences of this infection, with high mortality and everything else. Today, the situation is a little bit more subtle. We don't see big outbreaks anymore. Most likely, this is because of the introduction of very efficient vaccines like Transmune. But today, the fact is that Gumboro disease, the clinical form of Gumboro disease, is not a major concern anymore, right? But one thing that we have to consider that subclinical infections might be causing some damage to these birds, that at the end of the day, it would exacerbate the infections that I mentioned before. It can be H9N2, or it can be Newcastle disease that some parts of the continent are facing, or even avian influenza. So, as Gumboro disease can be very, very detrimental to the immune system, leading to immune suppression, we have to consider that this is part of the disease situation that we are facing today in Asia.
Okay, so as we see in different parts of the world that the clinical disease is not so present anymore, at least it's not so easy to detect if the clinical signs, root mortality, and all these classical clinical signs, is more a subclinical disease nowadays, right? I would like to ask you to complement what kind of impacts do you see in the poultry farm, or even further in the slaughterhouse when you have this subclinical disease?
Yes, this is something that's not so easy to measure. But whenever you see presence of variant strains in the birds, it's very common to see an increase in condemnation rates in the slaughter plants. It's much more common to see flocks needing the antibiotic treatments, so it has this type of impact. And it's interesting because it's not very easy to measure. However, the damage is there, increasing 1, 2, 3 points of SCR, as I mentioned before, increasing the condemnation rates, increasing the use of antibiotics. At the end of the day, this has been the impact of these subclinical infections here in Asia.
Yeah. Correlating what you said about this subclinical challenge and the surveys that are conducted in Asia, Do you see any specifically strain that are impacting more nowadays?
Yes, there is one variant strain that the name is SHE19 that was detected in China 2 years ago. And the strains that have been identified in other countries are genetically related to this strain that I mentioned before. And this strain has the capability to cause some level of depression. And this is with all the impact that I mentioned before, increasing the FCR, increasing the contamination rates, increasing the use of antibiotics, and some other negative impact on the bird's performance. So it's really one of the concerns right now is with this vitamin type 2 strains.
Okay, and as you said as well, that is it's harder to detect and harder to check the subclinical, right? Consider that to control a disease, especially Gumboro disease, is essential to understand the dynamic and have the proper diagnosis. How do you monitor? What's your way to monitor the disease?
Yeah, here in Asia, we have a very thorough monitoring through the GPS. And what we do is really to take bursa samples in FDA cards and run molecular diagnosis. This is by far the most accurate way to identify these vitamin strains and then to propose the proper ways to deal with that or to get rid of these vitamin strains from the farm. So through serology, let me complement this. Through serology, it's very difficult or maybe impossible to differentiate. You have to go for molecular techniques really to identify these vitamin strains in the person.
So the next step after understanding and knowing the challenge you have in the field is going to be the control, of course, to avoid any kind of loss, any kind of risk to the flock, right? Can you share with us any experience that you succeed to control the disease in a clinical or subclinical situation?
Yeah, this is a very interesting question, Marco, and let me share what we have learned in these past 3, 4, 5 years that we are finding this virus in the field. And actually, we have set up some studies in the field with large number of birds to investigate how to get rid of this virus. And one of the ways that we did it was to use transmune plus IBDL associated to the very strong cleaning and disinfecting procedures, plus a very proper downtime period. And with this type of approach, let me repeat, strong biosecurity, they use a transmune, in some cases, IBDL, and the proper downtime period, we were able to eliminate this variant virus after 2-3 rounds. We eliminated very consistently during using this approach. And this was very, very much appreciated by producers because they saw that using this approach, using transmune that is able to stop the Gumboro cycle, there was hope by this virus that was at the end of the day stealing a few points in FCR, stealing a few points in terms of condemnation rates, and stealing some points in the performance.
Okay, great, Marcelo. So I would like to thank you a lot to sharing, to apporting all this knowledge. But before we close the conversation today, I have one last question for you. And I would like to ask you your advice, a little bit more personal approach, your advice for the vets when the topic is controlling Gumboro disease.
Marco, this is Well, this is a difficult question, maybe the most difficult question that you asked during this conversation. But yes, a few points that I would consider when dealing with the bull. First, use a vaccine that has proven track record, that is able to stop the Gumboro cycle, that is able to displace few particles. But it's not only about using the right vaccine. Make sure that this vaccine is properly applied in the hatchery. And most important, follow up the results in the field. Take samples, take burst samples, send these FTA cards to the lab. Store the results of your vaccination. At the end of the day, Marco, controlling Gumboro is not about vaccine, it's not about vaccination. But controlling Gumboro is about hard work, commitment, and most importantly, the execution of what you have planned. If you do this, do a vaccine, I would strongly recommend TransImmune. Then, proper injection and proper follow-up, you are going to succeed.
So Marcelo, once again, thanks a lot for our conversation, to bring to us all this experience and knowledge, controlling not just Gumboro disease, but all the connection we can have for the bird health. So for you that's watching us, thank you to follow us, thank you to be with us. Keep well, keep safe. Bye. Thank you for watching this episode. And do not hesitate to give us your feedback by commenting down below in the comment section. Goodbye, stay safe.